Hi everyone, it's Tammy with Shabby Fabrics. I'm here today with Frost Hill. This is such an adorable wall hanging. I love this wall hanging. This is on Wander Lane. It is featuring snowmen, mittens, cute little mugs with straws. So cute. Perfect for those winter months, perfect for January. So I'm going to walk you through elements for the first 3 blocks, the snowman, the mug, and the mitten. I'm just going to give you some elements, some tips and tricks that I use to get these blocks to come out, and we'll go from there. You're going to definitely want to use your Shabby Fabrics cutting guide if you have our kit. You're going to want to use this to cut your pieces. Definitely label your pieces. I know I stress this every single month, but I'm telling you, if you don't label your pieces, you tend to get lost. You will need the book from Nancy Halverson. Our cutting guide does not replace this book. You will need this book to understand how to put this together, and all of the sewing directions for these blocks are in this book. All right? So I'm going to show you the first block. Let me put this all aside. The first block we're going to do is the Snowman Block. He's so cute. All right, now this wall hanging does have a large button set, and I want to talk about that. It has all the carrot noses. Look at all these buttons in this set. We do sell this separately. This is an add-on. So if you're looking at your kit and you do not have the buttons, that was an add-on. You can actually pause the video, jump over to the website, and grab the button kit, because we do have some of these still available. But this is a button kit for On Wander Lane, Frost Hill. All right? So I got all your carrot noses, all the buttons for the fronts of the snowmen. They're wonderful. Okay, so let me set him aside, and let's talk about how we get started with this. So I'm going to start by making his head. So I have an H square, which is his head, and 2 little B squares that we're just going to sew and flip. So you're going to draw the line on the back, sew on the line, right? This is what I get. Let's go ahead and trim that out. I'm going to use a Creative Grids 2.5 by 12.5 inch ruler on set with me today. I love this ruler. It has your 1/4 inch line right here with this dash line, and it has a lot of that anti-slip on the back of it. So I'm just going to put this dash line right on top of the sewing line and trim this out, just like that. Now let's go press that. And I am simply going to press this just like normal, right up. So I'm just going to open and fold it up, just like that. All right. Okay, there we go. All right, so that's H and B. The next thing we're going to need to do is we're actually going to build these pieces here, this top section of him. So for that, I need a C, an E, and a J, just like this. All right, so let's put that together. So I'm going to put an E on the side. I'm just going to line these up, and I'm definitely going to pin right here on the back of this, just like that. So 1/4 inch, and I'll see you at the sewing machine. Okay, so we've sewn this, so I'm going to press this towards the light blue. So I'm going to put the light blue facing up on my pressing mat, set my seam, and now press this up. Press that right open, just like that. All right, so the next thing we're going to put on is a J. This is his little scarf. So cute. Like this. All right, so you can see I placed my pins a little bit back from my seam allowance, so I can start here and sew all the way down. All right, so I'm going to go do that. All right, so same as before, I'm going to press toward the piece that I just added. So I'm going to turn this over, set that seam, and then press that open with my fingers. I just kind of finger press that open in the beginning before I put an iron on that. All right, and the last piece we're going to add on is C right here, okay? So let's do that. All right, on this one, I'm going to pin right here at this seam allowance. So that stays like that. Now this seam allowance is facing the direction that I'm going to be sewing. So I'm definitely going to want to pin that down right here, just like that. So that's just going to remind that seam allowance to stay flat. So when I sew across there, it's not going to try to flip on me. Okay, let's go sew that. All right, so as before, I'm going to go ahead and press to the piece I just added. All right, and there I have my snowman head, just like that. Perfect. Let's set him right there. Okay, hopefully I'm not going to need my seam ripper. I'm going to leave it all the way up there. All right, so now let's take a look at the snowman body. So to do the body, we have sew and flip again. I have 3 F squares that are going to go here, here, and here, okay? As soon as I do that, I'm going to add a D rectangle. And this is what that's going to look like. This. So I've added F squares to the corners and a D rectangle here. Let's go ahead and press that out. I'm going to press straight towards that rectangle, just like that. All right, now we're going to do some other sew and flip. So the scarf piece, this piece right here at an angle, it's actually a square. This is a very easy way to do a complicated piece like this. We're not going to try to cut a thin strip and sew in there or anything like that. So I have a K square. So the first thing I need to do is I need to draw a line on the back of this, okay? So I'm going to pick a ruler and a friction pen. And I'm simply going to draw the line corner to corner, okay? So this is how that's going to look after I do this with sew and flip, right? Just like that. And I like that. But do you see how these rectangles, now see, this is where Tammy gets really crazy with directional fabric. You can see my rectangles are actually going the other direction for the scarf, right? So if you want your rectangles to go that direction, you're going to need to do this with the other side. See that? That is how I want that to look. So that these rectangles are going across. If I do it like this, these rectangles are now up and down, okay? So we're going to take the line back off of here. That was quick. Turn my square and test it one more time. There we go. That's what I want that to look like. I'm going to open this up, and I'm actually going to draw my line again the other direction. Okay, now if directional fabric does not matter to you, just go. Just put it on there however you want and just go. To me, I really like to ensure that all my directional fabric goes the right way. Okay, so I'm going to sew from here to here. Actually, I'm going to put a pin in a little bit different place. I'm going to pin right here to hold this side together. So I'm going to start here and sew corner to corner, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I sewed corner to corner. I'm going to go ahead and press this and make sure that it looks the way I want it to look. So you notice I did not cut that yet. Yep, that's how I want that to look. I want those rectangles going crossways. They're going to lay horizontally there. So now I'm going to go ahead and trim this. Okay. All right, so the next piece that goes on is G, and that's right here in this corner. So I'm going to take a G square, and again, I'm going to draw the line on the back. You can draw the line. You can also use a folded corner clipper. Let's talk about that. I'm going to take this mark off of here. All right, a folded corner clipper, if you don't want to draw the line, look at this. We're going to put this square on here. I'm going to take a Creative Grids folded corner clipper. This is a very clever tool. It's going to trim off this piece that I trimmed off right here. It's going to trim that off first, but leave a 1/4 inch seam allowance so that my corner comes out perfectly. Let me show you how to do that. So I place my square where I want it. This is a 2.5 inch square. So I'm going to line my 2.5 inch mark here at the bottom of my square. And also, this black line right here on the end, this is perfectly lined up with the side of my fabric. This lines up here. This lines up at the top. Now, instead of drawing a line, I'm actually going to cut this. Let's cut that off. Now we're definitely going to want to pin that because I don't want it to move. I'm going to pin this here at the bottom, like this. You see how it's already trying to move away from the top? I'm actually going to put it back where I want it and pin that in place. There we go. All right, so I'm going to sew 1/4 inch corner to corner. Let's go do that. All right, so when I start this, I'm going to line up my 1/4 inch mark right here. I'm going to put my foot down and I'm going to put my needle down. And I'm just going to push this piece up right here. So I know I'm going to start right on that corner, right where I want to. And I'm following my 1/4 inch mark right here. This is also my 1/4 inch mark on my diagonal seam tape I have on here. You can follow that mark if you prefer. Just like that. See, I came right to the end, right on that corner, right where I wanted to. All right, so let's get our pins out and press this. Oh, that's cute. That's exactly what I wanted that to look like. All right, so you can see the little body is here. So I have a body and I have a head, and I'm simply going to put these together just like this, and then I have 2 A rectangles we're going to add on each side, and we have a snowman block. So I'm going to turn this over and let you see how I press this. All right, let's take a look at that. So you can see I press this back up. Anytime I have points here, I'm going to press it towards something that does not have points. I have a point, a point, a point. I press this towards the scarf. Okay, just like that. These are pressed up, and the borders, the side borders are pressed out as you would expect. Okay, so that is the snowman block. I'm going to clear all this out, and I'll be back, and we're going to do the mug block next. All right, I'm back, and I have the mug block. This is very cute. So this block has the feature fabric in the center of it. So this, I trim these out with a 3.5 inch by 3.5 inch Creative Grids square ruler. This ruler is an invaluable tool when you are making these wall hangings. All of these squares are cut to 3.5 by 3.5, and therefore this tool is highly used. You're going to want to take your feature fabric and trace around it with a friction pen to make sure you're getting the motif that you are selecting. Once you have them all drawn out, go back and cut. We definitely planned out where we were going to be cutting when we made our quilt, because you've got all different pieces there. This will help you very much. All right, so that is my K block. So here's the mug block that we're going to be making. So we're going to start with the center. I have an H block or H rectangle, and these are on each side of this, just as you would expect. I have a G rectangle at the bottom and at the top. All right, sew these together, and then you're going to want to take your little A pieces like this, and we're going to do sew and flip in the bottom corner. And yep, I've done that ahead of time. This is what this looks like when I have this all put together, and you can see how I press just to the borders that I added. All right, so we can move these out of the way. Now I have this, so I'm going to go ahead and trim these. I'm going to use this Creative Grids ruler again. Trim, trim. All right, and let's press those. And I'm going to press them exactly like you would think. You're just going to press them right open. I found that this white texture fabric is a little tricky. Do this in good light, maybe when you're not tired, because the texture on it is very subtle. And so it's very easy to get these pieces reversed, and you're actually sewing on the wrong side of your fabric. You're sewing on the right side instead of the wrong side, and then when you turn it, you have the back of the fabric is showing, not the front, all right? So I know that's very difficult. I know you can't see that on camera, but trust me, it's a very subtle difference, all right? Okay, so now I have the mug is done, the block piece is done. Let's do the handle next, all right? So for that, I have an E, a J, and I have two I rectangles, just like this. So it's put together the same way. You're going to start by putting the E and the J together here. Then we're adding the I rectangles to the top and bottom. And then I'm going to sew and flip again. All right? So let's trim those. Just like that. All right, there's my handle piece. So now I'm going to add a couple of rectangles to the top and bottom of this. You're going to put your F is going to go on the bottom and your C on the top. All right, and that is your handle right here. 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Now the straw piece, let's look at that. So the straw, we're going to have an L rectangle, and notice the direction that we cut this fabric. This is directional fabric. You're going to want to make sure that you're cutting this. This is how it looks on your piece of fabric because your selvage is here. So you're cutting the width first and the length second, all right? So that it looks like this when we turn it, okay? All right, and then we're going to take our squares. Now we're going to sew and flip. But I'm going to sew and flip one to this corner and one to this corner. I'm going to show you what that looks like. That is going to look like this. See that? Looks kind of odd, doesn't it? So let's go ahead and press this first to make sure that these go where I want them to. I believe they will. Before we cut them. Sometimes it's good to check that, because when I cut that off, I don't want my rectangle to be a different size than it was when I first started, right? I want it to be the same size. Yep, that fits perfectly. That's going to work just great. All right, same size rectangle. I have my straw. We're simply going to add this unit to it and sew this to the top of the mug. That one was easy, wasn't it? I like that. All right, so let's take a look at the mug, and let's look at how I pressed all of this. So I added this went to the mug first, and I pressed this towards that rectangle because there's nothing there, right? There's no seams in this rectangle, so you definitely want to press that direction here. Now, when I put the handle on here, I decided to press this open. Let's look at that. I have all these patchwork seams going on here, and I have a point right here. This seam did not want to go one way or the other, so I decided it just got to be pressed open, and that is what I did right here. I pressed that seam straight open and then gave it a good press from the front. All right, and that is the mug block. I'll be right back with the mitten block. All right, I am back for the final block on this wall hanging. This is the mitten block. This one is a little more to it. We're going to build the thumb first, then the tree, and then the top and bottom of the mitten. All right, so let's take a look at that. So we have some directional fabric we're going to talk about here. So the first thing I have is the thumb block. All right, so I'm starting out with my thumb. I have a P rectangle. I have a little C rectangles, a D rectangle, and these are squares. Sorry about that. These are squares. The P is the only rectangle. Everything else is squares. All right, and then I have an E square. All right, so I'm just gonna sew and flip these, just normal. We've done this, right? You can do whatever method you wanna use. You can use your corner clipper. You can just draw the line. You can use the cluck cluck sew tape and not draw the line. Whatever works for you, that's the method to go with. I draw the line because it's better on camera to show you. It's easier to see exactly what I'm doing, so it's not confusing. All right, so I did draw the lines. So I'm gonna go ahead and trim these away. This one. Now I'm gonna kind of move this one out of my way when I trim this, because I don't want to accidentally trim that square. All right, let's take a look at this now. So I'm just going to press this, as you would expect, right out. I have this Panasonic iron-on set with me today. I really like this iron. It's nice and hot. I love the tip for helping me to press these points out. And a wool pressing mat. Highly recommend that. All right, there we have a thumb unit. All right, and we're going to take an A rectangle is going to go on the top, and an F rectangle is going to go on the bottom. Those really are rectangles. Okay. All right, so that's how we make the thumb unit. All right, you see how I have everything labeled. If you don't have them labeled, it's very easy to mix up what's a C square, what's a D square, what is she talking about? And you're constantly referring back to your cutting directions. To me, I don't like doing that. That's why I label everything. All right, so now let's talk about the mitten. So right here, this little tree piece is actually a rectangle on each side of a little tiny flying geese. So I have an R rectangle and I have K squares here. And then I have a J rectangle, and these are going to go on either side of the top of the tree, just like this. All right, so let's look at putting this together. So when I look at this, I know that I want all of my stripes to run up and down, correct? I don't want them going sideways. I want them all to be uniform on the mitten so that it looks like it's been knitted, right? I guess that's the idea. All right, so when I have my little square, I'm going to fold this square in half like this. And I'm going to place it on here, and I'm going to verify, yes, that is exactly what I want that to look like. Let go of it. Now I'm going to draw the line. Because, boy, I do not want to lose that line right there. I know that's how I want that to look. Okay, so you'd sew corner to corner. You're going to do another one. You see how this is done? You have your square and it's put on here sideways. This one's going to go the other way. right? So this one, I put them on here like this. If I draw the line on this one this way, and you flip that, look what happens. Now my stripes are running the wrong way. They're going the opposite direction. So to do the other side, I actually have to turn this square. There it is. That's how that goes. So you'd actually put your line the opposite direction. And I can do that really quick. It would actually go this way. Before, my line was running this way. Now that is correct. So even though you have your square set on one side, when you go to the other, it's going to be different. All right, and I have that right here. Now here's this one. I can go ahead and trim this out. And let's flip that. Just like that. Perfect. All right. So now I'm going to add a rectangle to either side of this, and that's going to give me this very first piece in the top of the tree. Okay? So I'm going to go do that, and I'll be right back. All right, so I've got these sewn. Now I'm just going to press them to the rectangles, all right? So let's go ahead and do that. There's one. And there's the other. All right, that is our first row. We're going to set him right there. Okay, so let's talk about our next row. That's this one. I like this. It's a little bit bigger, a little bit easier to work with, some little bigger pieces here. Same thing, sew and flip on each side. Now we're going to put an L rectangle on either side of it. And this is what that looks like. All right, here's this guy. Okay, the next one, same size piece for the rectangle. The squares are the same size. But here, these little guys are a little bit smaller. They go on either side. All right? And this is what this looks like. Okay? All right. Now, let's talk about the rest of this. So I have the mitten cuff is Q and G right here. These go together like this. Okay, we have an O, this piece right here. Let me move that down. We have an O, and then we sew and flip this little tiny piece on the end. It looks way smaller once it's sewn in the block than it does right here, doesn't it? Look how big it looks here. That's the right size, I promise. Goes on here and here. All right, last piece is at the top. You grab that. So I have I and 2 B squares here. And again, you just sew and flip on the top. There it is right there. That is your mitten block. All right? You sew all these pieces together. Add your thumb unit. And then we're going to add an A rectangle, or H, I'm sorry. That's an H on this side. Let's see what that looks like. Now I pressed all of these open, because they were getting very heavy and the seam allowances were just going crazy. So I knew I needed to press those open because of all these points right here, all this fabric in here. The other seam I pressed open is this one when I put the thumb on. When you put the thumb unit on, again, I had points here and here, and I opted to press that open. All right? There we go. That is the mitten block. So thank you so much for joining me for this series. This is the 12th wall hanging in this series. So we have done all 12 months. I can't believe it's been a year I've been with you doing this series. It's been great. I hope you've really enjoyed it, picked up some tips on how to piece these smaller pieces, directional fabric. You know my little tips for that. Now you're an expert. how to use your extra fine patchwork pins. I did not use a seam ripper, thank goodness. Folded corner clipper, your different Creative Grids tools, they will make you more successful. When you're working with small pieces, take your time. That's my biggest piece of advice. Take your time. You can do it. Just take your time. Don't rush through it or do it when you're really sleepy, because I tend to make a lot of mistakes when I'm really tired. I try not to do that. All right? So thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next time on a Shabby Fabrics tutorial.